Well, this is an economic story with a very human face to it. They're among the most vulnerable groups in the labor market, which is already soft. Migrant workers. They leave their home countries in search of better pay to support their families, but because of the economic downturn, they are also sending less money back home. Manuel Orozco is director of the Remittances and Development Program at the Inter-American Dialogue. He's been looking at the trends, calculating the numbers, and quantifying the impact on the economy of these home countries, of these migrant workers. Manuel joins us now from Washington. Good morning to you. Manuel, can you put a dollar figure on this for us? How much money is not heading into the Latin markets that had been planned on by some of these families?
Well, we expect that by 2009, the volume of remittances to Latin America in particular will be $62 billion. That's about $7 billion less than in 2008, which was $69 billion. So the drop is significant and is going to affect at least 1 million households that will not receive money, and another 5 million who will receive only 10% less from what they received the year before.
And those wages, those salaries had been coming out of the U.S., had been coming out of Canada and flowing down into some of these Latin countries. Who is feeling it the most right now? Is it Mexico?
Well, no. The countries that are feeling the impact the most are the ones that are more dependent, and those are small countries from Central America and the Caribbean. For example, a country from the Dominican Republic or a country like Nicaragua or El Salvador, where at least between 50 to 100,000 households stop receiving money, will be affected dramatically because they're going to have to learn to cope with less money, at least during this time of the year.
Mm-hmm. And I would imagine that the business community is feeling this when you look at the Western unions of the world. You look at some of the banks who have benefited in some ways from that flow of migrant labor in past years during the construction boom. Now they're not getting as much of a piece of that business if less money is flowing back to Latin America from the U.S.
Yes, the industry in money transfer has been affected because the demand has dropped. Therefore, the revenues are dropping too for the transactions they make on the money. Also, other businesses have been affected, especially in the developing countries, because they depended on the demand for goods and services that the households that received remittances were using. The percent of the amount of money that they were spending on consumption was proportionally higher than people who did not receive remittances in these countries. So now that there is a drop in the demand, that had an effect also in the local economies of these countries.
Now, outside of this hemisphere, there's obviously a large percentage of migrant workers in the Middle East coming from South Asia, Southeast Asia in particular. You're seeing a lot of migrant worker help flow away from some of Western Europe right now as well. Can you compare for us those different markets? How much of an impact?
The global economy, you can divide it in at least 6 major global markets: North America, Western Europe, especially the European Union, Russia and Kazakhstan, Southeast Asia with Japan, Singapore, among other countries, and the Arab oil exporting countries. In all of those countries, there is a significant demand for foreign labor to perform economic activities that are important for those economies. In comparative perspective, the impact of the economy has had different effects. For example, the most affected labor force among migrants in this segment is people from Central Asia and the Caucasus working in Russia. The Russian economy was that badly affected by the global economy, particularly in construction, and 50% of the labor force working in construction was migrant-based. That's one particular country. The other one that has been affected also dramatically is Spain. Also, like Russia, relied significantly in foreign labor in its construction industry. And right now, there is a 20% unemployment rate in that country. So you can imagine the impact that it has on foreign labor, but also on the families of those people. And in the case of Spain, for example, and France, another case that has suffered from the recession, you have people from Africa, from Algeria, Morocco, and Senegal, who are sending much less money than, for example, from the United States to
well,
those parts of the world.
Here in the U.S., we're talking about unemployment perhaps growing past the 10% level. That's not accounting for some of these undocumented workers who are facing job losses.
Well, in the United States, the decline, the unemployment increase was, right now is about 13%, which is significantly high. But the most important impact is not as much in the unemployment itself, but in the loss of earnings among those immigrants who are still working. Because, for example, those who are in the construction industry had to shift to more flexible jobs that are less paid. You were earning from $25 an hour, now they're earning about $12 an hour.
All right.
And you know that it's just very difficult to live on that.
Underemployment and unemployment. Thank you so much, Manuel Orozco of the Inter-American Dialogue.